Okay, hi, I'm Natasha. I'm founder and CEO of Eon. We're the leading digital identity company across fashion, apparel, and retail. And we're a company that's focused on using connectivity to power circular economy.
And so, to get started, thank you, Natasha. Do you want to start probably by telling us a little bit about the story behind Eon? How did that came to mind? How did that start?
Yeah. So, first of all, thanks so much. It's really nice to meet you guys. I'm really excited about what you're doing and congratulations on that. That's amazing. So my background was kind of similar to Liz D in that I was working in smart and connected cities, and really looking at future urbanism. And one of the tasks that we were assigned to do was design healthy cities. And I was working throughout some of the most polluted parts of the world and given this mandate to start designing healthier cities and more equitable cities. And that work was really impossible with the levels of pollution. So that led me to an interest in circular economy and the underlying systems that would be essential to operationalizing circular economy at scale. And from my cities background, my whole insight was around systems and building infrastructure and interconnectivity. And so as in my research in circular economy and how I understood industry was operating in circular economy was always a design intention. It was, oh, we've designed this product to be circular. But there weren't necessarily, from an urban perspective, the systems to capture that product after sale, right? So if a product is designed with the best intention to be biodegradable or to be recyclable, unless that product can be ID'd as biodegradable and put in a specific material pathway, you can't actually build the systems for circular economy, right? So with that thesis of looking at how to really design this circular system, IoT, or the Internet of Things, came to, in my opinion, started to be this underlying digital backbone that enabled products to be identified and managed throughout this system, right? So the premise of circular economy is that we're in an interconnected system and all of these products and materials will continuously be in flow, right? And with the Internet of Things, you're connecting products that are disconnected from the system to a broader system, such that those products can be ID'd, their material contents can be recognized, their utilization can be managed. So you're starting with the Internet of Things enables you to actually bring products online, connect them to a system. And what's so exciting today is that from production to point of sale or in the supply chain today, IoT technology is already being used, right? We would not be able to produce the billions of products that we do today without being able to identify them with like a barcode, right? It would be possible for a company to, hey, Fernanda,
Yeah.
it, it would be impossible for a company to be able to manage all of the products they have without some form of identity. So when we look at circular economy, it would be impossible to manage circular economy, all of those billions and billions of products together if you can't ID the products. So to me, digital identity and the Internet of Things became the backbone to enabling the digital or the digital infrastructure to operationalize circular economy.
And I'm not a technology person, so sorry if my question is too obvious.
Mhm.
But once you label things, so once you identify this or you put the microchip, where does this information go to? Who has the database or who controls it? Like, could you explain me a little bit more how it works?
Yeah, great. So I'll start with basically what is a digital identity. So when you digitally identify, let's say, this product, you need information in the cloud, right, that holds that data, right? So, and then you need to actually attach something to the physical product to enable you to access that location in the cloud. So I'll give you an example, right? Let's say you're using an RFID tag as your identifier. That's what you attach to the product. That RFID tag is just a number, right? It's number 23456. That number
Mhm.
doesn't really mean anything. But now you're basically using that number to connect you to a web location that has all the information about the product. So you could think about it a little bit like the RFID tag number is like your name. And then when you search your name, it comes up with your Facebook page. And then you get a vision of the product. And so we store product data in the cloud.
Okay.
And you can, there are various cloud service providers from Microsoft to AWS. We work on Azure, which is Microsoft's cloud. And in terms of data ownership, basically, it is the brand product data today that we're associating to the product. So that's their data. What gets new and is uncharted territory is if this product, right, let's say this product is, Calvin Klein, and it's identified, Calvin Klein puts in the product data, that product then goes to get resold. Well, then you have a reseller who's going to scan the ID and access that information about that product. So who owns what you call interaction data? That registration of the product at a resale facility, that registration of a product at a recycling facility. So there's new markets that are being created where a product with a digital identity can actually generate data across its life cycle. So that's what we call the passport function.
Mm-hmm.
There are basically two functions of the digital identity. There's the birth certificate, right, which is the information that the brand puts into the product ID. And then there's that passport function, which is how that product moves across the life cycle, very much like your human passport. Where did you go?
And what happens in a circular economy model or idea? I think products have different lives, right? So after being utilized as, let's say, a pullover, it might have a new life afterwards, turning into something else, a textile of something else. When you decompose the product into different items or raw materials, how would that microchip kind of travel along with the different parts of the product?
Yeah, great question. So basically so an identifier can be in different forms. An identifier can be an RFID, which is, as you describe, a microchip. It could be an NFC tag. It could be a QR code, right? There are various forms of identifiers. And so it's really important for a platform to be, as we call, identifier agnostic. So we can work with any of those identifiers to enable you to access the data, right? So you could think of the identifiers as the gateway to the product data.
Mm-hmm.
And basically, when that identifier arrives at, let's say, a recycling facility, there's one identifier per product today, right? So this product will have one identifier. This product may have buttons and a zipper and a this. And what is stored in that product's ID is all of the information about the various components of that product. So, for example, to recycle a pair of denim today and go cotton to cotton, they need to know the thread type, right? If it's cotton pants, it's polyester thread, or how do you recycle that zipper if you don't know whether it's a nylon or polyester zipper? So basically, the product ID includes the components of the product, including the button type, whether it's copper or nickel, and the component breakdown of the items. Or let's say the sleeves of this are made of a different material that should be disassembled. So that is where the complexity of information associated with each item and the uniqueness in apparel is also why that digital ID can start to holistically identify all the components of that product for either disassembly and recycling.
And what happens if those components are separated? And for example, metals go to a different industry or to a different production line, and cotton goes to a different textile production line. So what happens if the components of a product are set aside and sent to different? You need two identifiers now, right? One for the metals and one for the cotton.
Yeah, so basically that separation of products and it happens at what we call like recycling or sorting facilities. right? So they, like an ICO is a recycler and a sorter, they receive the product, the whole product, and then their job is to pull that product apart and figure out where those components should go. So in that process, they're going to take the buttons off and they're going to say, oh, those nickel buttons should go to this recycler, right? And so yes, they're going to have to then take the different components and label them. Today,
Okay.
they do that, but they just don't have any way to do that digitally. They don't even have that information. So a lot of those pieces really just go to waste because they don't know the component.
Um, I didn't put this down in our list of questions, but it came to my mind now. And what's the price of this? Who pays for this? Is it how much does it cost and who pays for it? Is it the consumer? Is it the brand? Is it the supplier, like the producer of the product, or who carries that
Yeah.
price?
So today, brands are moving to digitally identify products regardless of circular economy. So I think that's really important to note. We are leveraging digital identity for circular economy, but the technology is valuable to brands from a commercial perspective, first and foremost for them, right?
Okay.
So we are layering, and that's actually the what makes this really exciting is that, for example, these a lot of the major brands and retailers today already RFID tag every single item the moment it's produced until point of sale. They remove that identifier at point of sale. So we're basically working with them to advance their intelligence, embed that identifier in the product, and also associate data with that ID. So that digital profile is valuable for them in managing supply chain management, inventory management,
Mm,
um, retail innovation, let's say a skip checkout or security, let's say it's omni-channel strategy. Digital ID basically provides the backbone for brands to start managing their products in a more intelligent way and aligning supply and demand. After point of sale, that digital identity is the backbone for rental, resale, product as a service, all those new business model innovation things that the brands are working on. So it's a investment in digital infrastructure that brands are making, and we are marrying that investment with circular economy principles,
okay. So,
right? So we're saying if you're putting a digital identity on your product, you should also associate all of the information that's essential for that product to be resold, recycled. Um, but we're based like if we went to brands today and said, listen, you have to do all this just so your products can be recycled, it would
mhm,
be expensive. It's the alignment of digital investment in, across their value chain with circular economy principles that makes this viable and makes it possible for the investments to move very quickly because of the ROI or the return on.
okay. So, who would you say that are the main groups of interest? Let's say, like, who benefits from this? I've heard clear that the brands are probably the most interested in having the digital identity of their products so that they can manage their supply chains. But then
Mhm.
who else could benefit out of this information or technology?
Great question. So brands benefit, obviously, as you outlined, from all those different commercial
Yeah.
value propositions. Then you have the circular economy stakeholders. Let's say you're a reseller. Let's say you're a recycler. Today, it's very hard and inefficient for you to do your work. If you're reselling a product, you're manually typing in all that information to get that product online. You're trying to figure out what product it is, what was its original price, what is its material content, all that information that a customer wants to know, even if they're purchasing a product in the second market, right?
Mm,
So
yeah.
with digital identity, you're able to scan that product and bring that product online instantly and authenticate it. So it really powers intelligence for the resellers. If you're a recycler today, you have people who are looking at products trying to guess what material content it is, or from experience assess. You don't know things like dye process, which means you can't actually make that cotton into cotton. So you now have the information essential to perform your processes. The other groups that benefit from digital identity are the customer, right? If you have a digital identity for your product, how much easier does it make it for you to capture the economic value of that product, right? So let's say you buy a product and now you can resell it easily and you can instantly post it online. So it actually provides the customer with kind of a certificate of the item that they bought in a way that's digitally transferable, right? This is my item. I want to share it with you. I want to rent it out. So you actually have more flexibility and can monitor and can extract more value from your own assets. You also have more transparency. So you can now see, where did this product come from? Who made this product? Things like country of origin, things like factory of origin, all that information can be associated with the item itself. So you can access that information from your products and know more about your items.
Could you access, for example, wages of the people who have produced the product, or
Totally.
working conditions? Like, could you add in that type of information so that the customer and even governments know how are brands producing their products?
Totally. So one of the things that we're working on aligning with is, so basically I'll back up here for 1 second and give you kind of a little bit of a different angle in terms of how we approach this conversation. But basically, as we started working with brands to ID their products, one of the biggest things that you come across, or the challenges, is how a product ID speaks to players outside of someone's own company, right? So if I'm H&M and I make a product ID, how does my ID speak to this recycler? And how do all the other brands design an ID that also speaks to that recycler or that reseller? So that term is what you call interoperability. How do you design IoT systems and data structures in a way that are interoperable and allow for communication between entities? And in a circular economy and in the supply chain today, products are an aggregate, right? You have competing brands making products at the same factory. You have all the brands recycling through, 5 major players. So these IDs need to be designed for the interconnected system. And if they're not designed for the interconnected system, they're not designed for circularity, right? Because circularity revolves around the idea of all these players being able to communicate and collaborate. So that's why we created this circular ID standard, this standard data structure that we're introducing to all of the brands and retailers for how to design their product IDs and structure their product data in a way that gives the circular economy partners all of the information that they need to manage that product in circular economy. Right? So a brand today may not know what information ICO needs to recycle their product, but we've worked with those leading recyclers to codify the information that they need. And in the circular ID standard, now it's publicly available. Brands can know, hey, if we want our product to be recyclable, we need to include all of this data. So I'd say digital identity is a little bit like your next generation barcode. Like, every company that is making a product will be introducing a digital identity in the near future, and they experience different values from it.
Okay.
So if you're a fast fashion company, you need digital identity to start to transition to a circular model, to be able to recycle your product, to be able to align supply and demand and have better inventory management and produce in response to your customer needs and produce and manage at speed, right? If you're a luxury retailer, you need digital identity to engage with your customers, to support more personalized experience, to provide transparency on the quality of that product, to communicate about the product properties, to authenticate that product, and provide more immersive customer experience and omni-channel strategy. If you're a mid-tier brand, you need it for both of those, the combination of both of those, right? So it's really this premise of IDing the product is not a siloed to one brand or partner type. It's really cross industry. So when we looked to begin the Connect Fashion initiative, it was very hard to get brands on board. We were a startup, we didn't have credibility, and this was a very new concept. So we really were we're so grateful to our first mover partners, which were H&M, PVH, which owns brands like Calvin Klein, Tommy Hilfiger, as well as Target. Now in 2020, we'll be expanding that membership cohort, and including other brands that represent different types of business models. But again, that circular ID standard will maintain consistency across all of the different partner types.
What are the partner types?
Like whether they're a luxury brand, mid-tier, or fast fashion.
Okay.
You still need the same information associated with the ID.
Has
Then,
any government
oh yeah,
participated?
sorry, Patricia.
Yeah. Sorry, has any government participated or supported in any way?
Great question. Not right now, but we do have conversations with groups that are looking at policy around mandated item level identity. So if you look at this part gets me very excited, but basically today there's no way to measure in circular economy. A brand can be like, this product's circular. It's like, how, why was it circular, right? And so basically without any system for measurement, circularity is just becoming a term that's being used without kind of governing principles or measurement to support whether that product is actually, making its way back into the system. So digital identity provides the ability to actually measure. You can now say, oh, X% of this product arrived at this recycling facility. X% of these materials have been resold, and start to bring for the first time measurement as well as accountability behind circular economy. So now so from a legislation perspective, you could say, are you guys familiar with extended producer responsibility?
I think I am, and this is more frequent in Europe, isn't it?
Yes.
The European Parliament that's pushing. So, but if you mind explaining a bit more, I'm sure we can all benefit.
Okay, great. It's basically there's a tax essentially if you can't demonstrate that your products are recyclable or have been recycled. And it can come in different formats. I won't go into the details, but basically with product identity, you can create incentives for brands to recycle and also economic rewards for having their products be recycled, and start to build in systems of accountability. Or if your product is not recyclable, then you're also accountable. Who's going to take all of this product here? Oh, well, it belongs to this brand. It goes back to them. They're responsible to manage these products. And so that new level of, accountability that digital identity can bring to the second market is really what I believe will start to change and bring a lot of investment.
But this is super new, right? Like how many countries actually? I think I've only heard of the European Parliament, and it's not that it's starting to get strict. But I'm not expert in that in law.
Yeah. It's not tomorrow, but I think what's exciting is that we're working to lay the foundation so that it can be enabled. And what's interesting is the laying of that foundation is coming from leading brands and retailers who are saying, we believe that there's value in investing in circular economy, and we want to operationalize it because we know policy down the line is coming in this way.
You said that there was no measurement for circularity, and I was wondering for certificates such as cradle to cradle. Would you say that that's the way of measuring the authentication of a product being circular, or not really?
So cradle to cradle is a methodology for how to design products to a circular have high material quality and product health. It doesn't actually assure that that product after point of sale went to any specific location or was recycled. Or
So
was
it's everything that happened to produce the product, but what happens after the sale, we don't know.
Exactly. So by marrying digital identity with circular economy, with cradle to cradle, you can now actually So one of the lead on our team of the circular ID standard development actually used to lead the cradle to cradle Connect Fashion or Fashion Positive membership. So it's really exciting to have her deep expertise in material and product health now being married with connectivity, because all that embedded quality that cradle to cradle creates for a product like all that information is lost in association to the item. So for example, you could design this sweater of the best quality materials and it could be 100% recyclable. But when it arrives at Goodwill or a recycling facility, no one knows that,
Yeah.
right? So all that, what we call that embedded quality is lost because there's no way to communicate that information. Um, and I wish Annie was on the call, but she'll tell you like she was designing, some of the world's best and most circular products, but there was no way to actually see or record what was happening after those products left the door. So we're excited to be marrying that leadership of cradle to cradle and basically provide a digital carrier or information carrier for that information to stay with the product.
When was Eon founded?
Well, it was a little confusing. I'd say that technically I started working on this idea in 2015
Okay.
and left to work on it formally at my job in 2017. Formally like established the real company and LLC shortly thereafter.
So I'd say it was established in 20, it's quite early, yeah.
Yeah.
I remember a lot of discussions around, yes, like recycling, yeah, that's great, but it's very heavy in
Mhm.
human time to learn in the labeling of every product that this t-shirt is made out of what components. So this has probably a mix of cotton and polyester, and every one of our clothes that we're wearing now have different mixes of raw material. And so just to figure out what is this made out of and separate that, it takes a lot of time, hence it takes a lot of money. And so recycling was just not easy.
Exactly.
And do you see this scaling into more industries? How far do you think this can go?
We see basically digital identity being applied to really any and all man-made products. And the idea being that, let's say you make a couch, right? How does that couch and the material components of that couch get identified? How about your cell phone? How about your wallet, right? So it's from a conceptual perspective, it's like this idea that if you're going to use natural resources or resources that belong to this earth, you have a responsibility to ID those resources and ensure that they can get back into the economy. And digital identity provides that ability to ensure products and resources that we use are returned. It's kind of like if you're going to, Blockbuster, right? They kept track of what movie you took out so that you got it back. The earth is Blockbuster? I don't know what metaphor I'm going for, but you know what I mean.
Okay. I've just a couple more questions, and before we close, because I know that we've got the time quite running up.
Mm-hmm.
Quick question is around SDGs. Have you ever thought of this? Which SDGs do you impact? I mean, I've got my ideas, but I'd like to hear yours.
Yeah, so I think we see there's obviously the circular economy definitely touches many different SDGs, and there's also a lot of transparency that's unlocked through digital identification that addresses inequality and workers' justice. So I see different ways that it relates to almost all of them. I'd say that probably not no hunger or no poverty. I'd say, mainly applicable to responsible consumption and production, sustainable cities and commerce, reduced inequality, clean water and sanitation for sure, affordable and clean energy, climate action, life below sea, life on land. Those those would be the main ones that I see it relating to. And then economic growth. I also think it unlocks a lot of value in terms of new business models because digital identity enables, new applications like digital wardrobe, like peer-to-peer. It starts to create new intelligence that can unlock a lot of new business models and innovation opportunities across the industry.
Perfect. it's been said that circular economy kind of has a more environmental approach to things.
Hmm.
And I've heard the question being posed several times around what's the impact of circularity in people. And so
Yeah.
technology and digitalization and so on, it looks fantastic from the environmental perspective. But what do you think about the people's effect? What's the effect that it has on people?
Yeah. I think where it's interesting, like it's definitely circular economy will change production, right? This idea that we have less production and consumption and we're reutilizing resources. What does that mean for people who are making products, right? And that's scary. But I think what it also does is on the other end actually opens up all these jobs in reverse logistics, movement
Mm.
of products, peer-to-peer models. So I think it's definitely to go hand in hand. They really need to be looked at very closely, and we've been guided by the work of CNA Foundation, and having a lot of discussions with them on how to align the use of digital identity with transparency initiatives in the supply chain to support the human equation, and how to align, the identification of products in circular economy with new jobs and employment opportunities. So I think we think of digital identities as hopefully supporting, more equitable conditions and more opportunity for everyone on across the product life cycle.